They tried to cover up 216 deaths. But one poor fisherman refused to stay silent, and what he uncovered shook Mississippi to its core. Welcome to Wealth and Wounds, where we uncover the hidden struggles, the silenced voices, and the stories others are too afraid to tell. If you believe the truth must come to light, hit that subscribe button right now, because today's story is one you'll never forget. It was a cold morning in Mississippi when the first body was found. A young fisherman named Elijah Carter cast his net into the muddy waters of the river, just like he had every day since his father passed away. But that morning, the net pulled up heavy, too heavy. At first, he thought it was driftwood, but when he dragged it to the shore, his knees buckled. A lifeless body, face pale, arms stiff. He screamed. Within hours, police cars and sirens swarmed the riverbank. But the more they searched, the more horrifying the truth became. It wasn't just one body. It wasn't two. It was 216 bodies, packed into a hidden, rotting barge that had been chained to the riverbank, sunken and forgotten. The smell was unbearable, the sight unspeakable, and yet, instead of treating it as the tragedy it clearly was, the sheriff of the county, Sheriff Dalton Briggs, brushed it aside with cold indifference. Transient folks, he muttered to reporters. Probably smugglers or drifters. Nothing for good people of Mississippi to worry about. But Elijah knew better. He had lived long enough in Mississippi to recognize a cover-up when he saw one. Elijah tried to press for answers. Sheriff Briggs, he asked, trembling but firm, who were these people? Why are there so many of them? Somebody's missing loved ones out there. Briggs glared at him. You do well to mind your business, boy. Accidents happen. People die. And sometimes it's best not to ask questions you don't want the answers to. The words stung. Boy, even at 28, working to feed his family, Elijah was still treated like nothing. But what shook him most wasn't Briggs' tone. It was the look in the sheriff's eyes. A look that said, I know exactly what happened, and I'm not letting it out. Within days, the local news moved on. Headlines faded. Officials stopped talking. 216 lives, erased like they were nothing. But Elijah couldn't let it go. He could still see their faces in his dreams, floating, gasping for air, crying for justice. So he made a decision. If no one else would fight for them, he would. The deeper Elijah dug, the more dangerous it became. At the county records office, a clerk whispered to him, those names were scrubbed. Somebody high up doesn't want the truth out. At the diner where he worked nights, strangers began showing up, watching him too closely, following him home. One evening, his mother begged him to stop. Elijah, baby, you're just one man. These people you're poking at, they're powerful. They'll bury you like they buried those folks. But Elijah shook his head. Mama, those 216 didn't have anyone to speak for them. If I stay quiet, then Briggs wins. And they stay forgotten. The turning point came when Elijah met Dr. Lena Morris, a forensic pathologist for Jackson. She had heard whispers of the barge and came looking for answers herself. They didn't drown, she whispered after reviewing what little evidence remained. Most of them were poisoned first. Elijah's blood ran cold. So it wasn't an accident. No, she said. It was a massacre. Together, they uncovered a chilling truth. The victims were migrant workers, poor, mostly black and brown, who had come from nearby states looking for jobs in farming and construction. They were never reported missing because they had no one to report them. And Sheriff Briggs? He had signed off on dozens of work permits for a private contractor that had lost track of its workers. It wasn't negligence. It was exploitation and murder. Armed with evidence, Elijah confronted Sheriff Briggs publicly at a town meeting. His voice trembled but carried across the silent hall. 216 souls are dead because of you. You knew. You covered it up. You called them transients when they were fathers, mothers, children. Their blood is on your hands. The crowd gasped. Briggs turned red with fury. You watch your mouth, boy, before you end up in that river yourself. The threat was real. The tension was electric. And yet, something had shifted. The crowd, once silent, once afraid, began to murmur. For the first time, people were questioning the sheriff they had once blindly trusted. Briggs moved quickly to silence Elijah. Police raided his house, claiming to search for stolen documents. Elijah was arrested on false charges of trespassing. But what Briggs didn't count on was the power of the internet. Lila, Elijah's cousin, streamed the arrest live. Within hours, the video of Elijah being dragged away while shouting 216 Lives Matter went viral. Reporters from across the country descended on Mississippi. The FBI opened an investigation, and Elijah, the poor fisherman everyone underestimated, became the voice of the voiceless. Weeks later, Briggs was forced into court. The evidence that Elijah and Dr. Lena uncovered was damning. Falsified reports, erased records, secret payments from the contractor. The judge's gavel slammed down. Sheriff Dalton Briggs, you are hereby stripped of your office and remanded into custody, pending federal charges. The courtroom erupted. Some cried. Some cheered. Elijah stood silently, tears in his eyes. He had done it. He had forced the truth into the light. The 216 souls had not been forgotten. In a press conference outside, Elijah faced the cameras. Justice doesn't come easy. Sometimes the people sworn to protect us are the ones hiding the truth. But no matter how poor you are, no matter how small they make you feel, your voice matters. Don't let anyone silence you. If we stand together, they can't bury us all. The crowd applauded. His mother wept. Dr. Lena squeezed his shoulder. Elijah had gone from a fisherman with nothing to a man who forced an entire system to answer for its sins. Justice had been served, or so he thought. That night, Elijah received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no words, just a photograph. It was of another barge, not in Mississippi, but in Louisiana, and beneath it, scrawled in black marker, were 3 words. It's not over. Elijah froze. The war was just beginning. Elijah sat at his kitchen table, staring at the photograph in the envelope. Another barge, another river. The words "it's not over." His hands trembled. The world had just started to see him as a hero. But now, he wasn't sure if he could keep going. "Mama," he whispered, "they're telling me it's bigger than Mississippi." His mother's eyes filled with worry. "Elijah, you already shook the hornet's nest. You keep poking, they'll come for you." But Elijah clenched his fist. "If I stop now, then those 216 died for nothing. I owe them more than silence." Elijah and Dr. Lena Morris drove overnight into Louisiana. The road was silent, their headlights cutting through thick fog. They arrived at a forgotten stretch of river outside Baton Rouge. The stench hit first, that same rotten, metallic odor of death Elijah would never forget. Then they saw it. Chained beneath the mossy trees, half sunken in water, was another rusted barge. Dr. Lena gasped. "Elijah, this one is bigger." When they climbed aboard, their worst fears were confirmed. More bodies. Rows of them. Not 216 this time. Nearly double. Men, women, even teenagers. And this time, there were markings on their clothes. Logos. Tags. Uniform scraps. It wasn't random. These people had belonged somewhere. Dr. Lena traced one of the tags back to a global agricultural company, Delta Harvest Incorporated. On paper, they were feeding the world. But the truth was sinister. Migrant workers were disappearing from their job sites, never to be seen again. And Delta Harvest had ties to Sheriff Briggs, as well as local officials in multiple states. "This isn't one sheriff," Lena whispered. "It's a system." Elijah's stomach twisted. They hadn't just stumbled into corruption. They had uncovered a nationwide cover-up of human trafficking and murder. 2 nights later, Elijah received a phone call. A distorted voice hissed. "You should have left it in Mississippi. You want to be a hero? Heroes die young." The line went dead. Seconds later, the window of his motel room shattered. A bullet tore through the lamp where his head had been just moments earlier. Elijah and Lena fled into the night, hearts pounding. In their desperation, they reached out to Detective Mariah Johnson, an FBI whistleblower who had secretly supported Elijah during the Mississippi case. She met them in a diner, her voice low but urgent. "What you've got is bigger than you think. We've been tracking Delta Harvest for years, but every time we get close, the evidence disappears. Judges get paid off. Files vanish. Witnesses go missing. She slid Elijah a USB drive. Here, it's a list of names. Journalists, activists, people who died trying to expose this. If you're serious about this fight, you're next on that list. Elijah wanted to quit. The weight of it all pressed on him like chains. But when he saw the faces of the victims in his dreams, faces he couldn't name, but souls he couldn't forget, he knew he had no choice. He began uploading videos online. Not polished, not scripted, just raw truth. Footage of the barge, recordings of testimonies, documents tied to Delta Harvest. Within days, his videos exploded. Hashtag spread. Protesters gathered outside Delta Harvest facilities demanding answers. For the first time, the giant was bleeding. Delta Harvest struck back hard. Corporate lawyers called Elijah a liar. Paid news anchors smeared him as a radical agitator. Anonymous threats flooded his phone. And then, the worst blow came. Dr. Lena was kidnapped. One evening, Elijah returned to their safe house to find the door broken, her phone on the floor, and a note scrawled in red. Drop it, or she dies. Elijah collapsed to his knees, shaking. The fight had taken everything. His safety, his peace, now Lena. He cried out in anger. God, why me? Why'd you choose a poor fisherman to fight a battle this big? But then he remembered his father's words before he died. Courage isn't about not being afraid, son. It's about standing anyway. Through his tears, Elijah rose. No more running. He swore that night he would bring Lena back. He would finish what he started, even if it cost him everything. Through Detective Mariah's contacts, Elijah discovered where Lena was being held, an abandoned Delta Harvest warehouse near New Orleans. But that wasn't all. The warehouse wasn't just a holding place. It was a processing center. Files, photographs, and equipment revealed thousands of workers funneled through Delta Harvest system, exploited until they disappeared. This wasn't a local scandal. It was a national machine. Elijah realized with a shiver. The 216 was only the tip of the iceberg. As Elijah crept through the warehouse, he finally found Lena, tied to a chair, bruised but alive. He rushed to free her, whispering, I'm here. I'm not leaving you. But then a slow clap echoed through the darkness. Sheriff Dalton Briggs stepped out of the shadows. Not in chains, not disgraced, dressed in a new suit, a smirk on his face. Did you really think it was over, boy? I told you before, accidents happen. And tonight, you're about to have one. Behind him, armed men appeared, surrounding Elijah and Lena. Elijah's heart pounded. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. If this story left you shaken, then hit that like button, share it. Make sure you're subscribed to Wealth and Wounds, because in part 2, you'll see just how deep this conspiracy runs.